Hi, boys and girls. All right, let's review what we've already learned about the prevailing westerlies and the jet stream. The prevailing westerlies flow from west to east across the United States and around the whole world at the mid latitudes. So we focus in fifth grade on the United States, but keep in mind that this wind current of the jet stream, and these giant global winds called the prevailing westerlies are all blowing in there together. And they also blow around the whole planet, and they do it at the mid-latitudes where we live. Remember, the mid-latitudes are the place on the world where we have 4 seasons. It's also called a temperate climate, where you have summer, winter, spring, and fall. And the seasons or the temperatures range from cold in winter to hot in summer. Now, the rules for the prevailing westerlies is that they always go west to east. They move air masses across the United States. They move air masses and weather into North Carolina. They bring us clouds and fronts. Also, the jet stream is really important because it too brings clouds and weather west to east. And also, when the jet stream comes down low below North Carolina, it brings very cold weather. And when the jet stream goes above North Carolina, it brings very warm weather. Also keep in mind that the jet stream can go way farther north. And up here in the northern part of the United States, there are these things called the Great Lakes. There are 5 of them: Erie, Huron, Superior, Ontario, and I forgot the last one. Lake Michigan. They're all great big lakes, right? And if the jet stream goes above them, then the region up here by the Great Lakes, which is far north, would be much warmer. And when the jet stream comes below, then it's much colder and more polar feeling. All right, at that climate level. All right, so now let's talk about why we have global winds that blow west to east in our temperate zone in the United States. And the reason that it starts off is all because of convection. So let's take a big look, and we're going to draw a giant United States, or a giant world, right? Try to make a circle as best as you can. And of course, no world, no globe would be complete without an equator right in the middle, right? So make sure that you put the equator right there. All right, and remember that the equator is 0 degrees latitude, right? And you also have been talking about latitude lines. So the idea is that latitude kind of goes with the global winds, right? That different latitude levels, then you have different global winds that blow in different directions. So you should be used to drawing right here, about here, right? You should about 23 degrees north latitude. You'll do that again. 23 degrees north latitude, and at about 23 degrees south latitude. Remember that that is the part of the world that is always warm, right? The tropical zone. So if you have your colored pencils with you, you're going to want to shade that in real quickly and lightly with red to show that this is the part of the world, right, that gets the most direct sunlight. The sunlight is the most powerful and most focused. And at this part of the world, we have the tropical zone. Now, this is not new to you, but what is new to you is that the tropical zone has global winds that blow opposite from our prevailing westerlies. We'll get to that in a minute. But the next thing I want you to do is I want you to make a much bigger temperate zone and make it at about 65 degrees north latitude. And remember, that's approximate. And then down here, make it about 65 degrees south latitude. All right. And this section, remember, is the section that has 4 seasons: summer, winter, spring, and fall. And so on our last thing, we made it kind of yellow. I'm having trouble finding a yellow. I'll use kind of a pale orange to show the yellow. All right, remember, this is your temperate zone or your mid-latitudes, meaning middle latitudes, right? Whenever you see mid, that just means middle. All right, so the tropical zone is in the middle by the equator, only goes to about 23 degrees north, but the temperate zone is much bigger, and we'll call it temperate. Remember that in the northern hemisphere and in the southern hemisphere, we have temperate. Oh, I didn't mean the temperature. All right, and then temperate zone down here. You have a repeating pattern of tropical, temperate, polar, tropical, temperate, polar. And that leads us down to the polar zone in the southern hemisphere and the polar zone in the northern hemisphere. And of course, those places are consistently cool all year long because they get much less direct, much less powerful sunlight. So they never get very cold. You can predict the climate to be cold there all the time. Just like you can predict that the tropical climate will always be warm. Now, here's the thing. As with all of our winds that have, every time we've studied wind, we have talked about how winds blow from the cold high pressure to the low pressure warm, right? And so here's the thing. Our whole world is set up to have uneven heating. Remember, that's one of our causes of wind. Uneven heating of the atmosphere. It's just, there's no way that it can't be uneven in our world because we always have way more direct sunlight in the tropics and way less direct sunlight in the polar regions. So essentially what you always have is you have squished up high pressure cold air that's sinking, and you have at the equator really warm low pressure air that's rising, making a giant convection current. Does that kind of make sense? If you can imagine it coming up towards you, you would have cold air sinking, warm air rising, and switching places across the whole world. So what you really should have is just have one giant global wind. But the other thing to consider is that our world is always rotating on its axis, spinning. And because the world is spinning on its axis, that causes the winds at different latitudes to blow in different directions. All right, so you already know that at the temperate zone, which is where we live, and for 5th grade science, you really only need to know about our global winds, the prevailing westerlies. Draw an arrow to show, you can make west to east. The winds at this latitude blow west to east. Now, they're also curved a little like this, right? So if you want to make them curved, you could. But the main thing I want to show you is that these winds are west to east. Wee! I call them wee, west to east. And then the same pattern is repeated in the southern hemisphere, that the winds are blowing west to east. Wee! Now, here's the deal. In our EOG, you're not going to be asked about these other kinds of winds, but you will be asked about ours, which are called the prevailing westerlies. Now, you might see something about the other kinds of winds, but it won't be the right answer to any of the questions because in 5th grade science, we have to know about the prevailing westerlies. And so I say that those are wee, get it, west to east, wee. And I say that the other winds, because at the tropics, you have east to west. And if you want to draw them in curly like they kind of actually are, you kind of curl like that. They go from east to west. And when I say, because you're never going to want to pick these winds, these are called the trade winds. They use them on the EOG as a distractor, right? And so you're probably never going to pick it. So that's why I say that these winds are don't pick them. The trade winds are not going to be the right answer on your EOG because we only have to know about the prevailing westerlies. So If you see the trade winds as an answer choice, it's not going to be right. It's going to be a distractor. Ew, don't pick them. All right. And then at the North Pole, these winds are called the polar easterlies, and same at the South Pole too. Polar easterlies. See, so these ones also go east to west, just like the trade winds do down in the tropics. Now, the trade winds are called the trade winds because they helped people from Africa and Europe get over to the New World because the winds were blowing over toward the Western world, and they became known as the trade winds because they helped ships go make trades, right? But the polar easterlies, those also go, right? They also go from east to west. L. See, they're L too. So if you see that for an answer choice on your EOG, don't pick it. It's not going to be right, right? L. Ew. Don't pick east to west winds because we have to know about the prevailing westerlies for fifth grade science in North Carolina. These are our most special winds that we have to know about. They bring our weather from west to east. They bring our weather from California over to where we live in North Carolina. And they blow west to east. Whee! All right. Keep that in mind, and you're going to be able to do pretty good on any questions you have. Don't pick the trade winds. No. Don't pick the polar easterlies. We have to know that winds, the global winds in North Carolina are coming from west to east. And that's the main information that you need to know for fifth grade science.